If ever there was a couple that personified the phrase, live life to its fullest, it's Rose and Lowell Cannaday. Between the two of them, they've packed more into their lifetime than some people could pack into 8. We'll find out more about this fascinating couple on this week's Profiles. Rose and Lowell, to sit and look at you guys' resumes is like looking at resumes for 3 people or 4 people. There's so much there that you both have done and that you both have accomplished over the years, and you still have a lot more life to go, God willing. A lot more to go because you're both still young people. I want to talk a little bit about how you managed to pack so much in and where the energy for that and sort of the foundation for that comes from. So let's go back to childhood, shall we? Rose, you grew up in not too far from here.
No, up in McKinney, which is just north of Dallas, so it was a great place to grow up.
What was life like at home for you, mom and dad, and what was McKinney like as a city then?
It was a small town. I think it was about 18,000 people at that time, and so everybody knew everybody. And I look back on it with a lot of fondness. My mother didn't work when I was young; she was home, and we just had a real good rapport. And you know, it was a place to grow up. You played sports, and you knew all your classmates, and all the relatives were like 5 minutes away, so it was a nice atmosphere.
Now, you also were born in a small town, but ended up being a big city boy, didn't you, Lowell?
Right. I was born in Mount Pleasant, Texas, but my father was in the oil field, and of course we moved around quite a bit. I think I was in Mount Pleasant for about 6 months, and then we moved to Longview and then on down to Houston. And we spent, well, from the time I was about 5 years old until I left for college in Houston.
Houston is a good city to grow up in. And while you were growing up as a boy in Houston, did you have any inclination that you would ultimately choose law enforcement as a career?
Well, I know that I had several police officers that I admired a great deal, but I also had several ministers that I admired a great deal, and so it was a bit of a conflict for me. And so originally, when I went off to college at Baylor University, my intent was to become a minister, and I was licensed to be a minister. And after that, I decided that perhaps the ministry that I really wanted was to go into law enforcement.
Some people would think of that as diametrically opposed. Ministry as one thing and law enforcement as completely another. But you found a way sort of to meld the two things, as you indicated. It's interesting to me that school was both religion and philosophy. Now, how does a religion and philosophy major become a police officer?
Well, it's kind of interesting, actually, if you consider that you know, the basis of the foundation for our country and law enforcement as we have it is, you know, we're a religious nation, and our laws and our values are based on religious principles, and so what better way to have an impact and to carry out the mission of the law than to have a religious background and philosophical background.
Sometimes a police officer has to look into the face of evil. There are some bad guys out there. And as a leader, you have to help them along. Would you consider that a part of a ministry?
Oh, yes. Yes, without a doubt.
In what ways?
Well, I serve as a minister to the people that work for me. I serve as a minister to the people that I work with in the community and in the organizations. I feel like that, you know, I guess perhaps it would come down to your definition of just exactly what a minister is, but as a person who deals with other people's needs, and I'm not alone in this. I believe that most police officers feel exactly the same way. Unfortunately, people sometimes have a somewhat convoluted picture of what police are if they watch things like Real Cops, or if their view of law enforcement is the old Elliot Ness sort of view of law enforcement, but the fact is we do serve as ministers in the community, taking care of the people.
From the whole point of being a peace officer. It's a sort of a slightly different way of saying a police officer, but you are a peace officer.
Yes.
You're charged with keeping the peace in the community.
Absolutely.
I think that people sort of have a glamorized notion sometimes, like you said, from the television shows, that this is what a cop is, and this is what a cop isn't. I want to switch tracks for just a moment. Speaking of things that are glamorized, you ended up in a career sort of through the side door, in a career that's considered very glamorous. But let's go back just a little bit to school. Did you stay in McKinney and go to school and high school there, and then where'd you end up going to college?
I did. I graduated McKinney High School. I went over to TCU in Fort Worth, Texas Christian University, and after my first year there, I married and then moved to Dallas. And I started taking some courses here and there at SMU, but then I became pregnant with my first child, and I kept going right up to almost when he was born, and after that, I just never quite got back to it because then I had two more right behind him. So,
3 children.
3 boys.
3 boys. I'm told that there's a special place in heaven for mothers with 3 sons.
There is. Trust me.
And Lowell, how many children do you have?
I have 3 also, but one of them was a girl.
That probably helped a little bit, though I don't know. From a daddy's point of view, having a little girl is a real different thing.
Yes, it is. But with fathers and little girls, there's a very special relationship. Yeah, but there also is with fathers and little boys too.
Yeah. We can talk some more about that too. I want to ask you, Rose, after these babies were born, you found yourself as a single mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. After about 10 years of marriage, I went through a divorce, and I had not worked. I'd been at home, and so I needed to go to work. And I had done modeling in high school and college, and so I did have some work behind cameras and things. And I guess maybe it was a natural process. I decided to see if I could go to work in radio television. And not knowing any better, I mean, I had no resume to speak of. I just started knocking on doors. And lo and behold, I got hired at KRLD, and my first job was a helicopter traffic reporter. So that's how I broke my way into the business.
Tell a little bit about how you managed to get that job, because that's an interesting story.
Well, I happened to be in the lobby one morning just making cold calls, I guess what you'd call it. And the general manager walked in, and we started talking. The receptionist told me who he was, and he liked me, and he says, well, come on back. And I went back, and we visited, and so he decided he was going to give me a chance just because he liked me. And when I think about that, it's incredible because I'd never been on the air live. So I went to try to get ready for whatever you do to go up in a helicopter, which there was really no getting ready. But I went up, and in this ear I had a headphone where the station was talking to me. In this ear I had the police reports coming through, and then the noise of the helicopter, and I had the map of the city in front of me, and I was ready. I was ready for wrecks. I wanted to report those wrecks. And but anyway, he had told me, if you do good, you're hired, and if you do bad, you're out of here. So it was a one-time deal, but he liked no pressure. But he liked what I did. I got hired, and it was through that entry that I was able to work behind the scenes, learn all of the the machinery and all the stuff inside the station, how to work everything. Started honing my interview skills, and that's how I got over into the news casting and then sports casting.
That's great. Lowell, how did you start your career, and where did you start your career in law enforcement?
I started my career in Dallas back in 1966. I decided that time's a wasting. I wanted to be a police officer, and I decided I was going to, and I went down and applied, and fortunately they gave me the job, and went through the academy.
And distinguished yourself in the academy.
Yes, I'm
Rookie of the Year? That's not bad.
I did graduate top academically, and then had a very successful first year also, and I was fortunate enough to be nominated for and receive the Rookie of the Year. And I worked my way through the ranks, all of the ranks in the police department. Had an exciting, very, very exciting career. It's one of those things that you get up every day and you're happy to go to work, and I've done that now for 32 years. and
I think it's
just incredible.
That is extraordinary to be able to say that, and that, to me, in my mind, goes back to the whole ministry thing. You've got to love it to feel that way about any job for 32 years, excuse me. You went into the police department at a fairly difficult and transitional time because it was shortly after JFK
Yes.
was murdered.
It was 3 years actually after Kennedy was assassinated there in Dallas. And so it was a difficult time for the department. There was a lot of transition, a lot of change taking place. It provided some excellent opportunities for promotion for me and to work in some areas that normally police officers just coming in don't have an opportunity to do. Had everything from working as the MC for their television show and working in planning the reorganization of the department, writing new directive systems, as well as working on the street in special operations, tactical, the SWAT team. And I got to work all over the department. And it's just an incredibly satisfying and rewarding career for me.
I know from a friend of yours in the police department over in Dallas who has distinguished herself over the years. She refers to you as her mentor. How much of training other police officers to follow along in your steps is a part of the whole ministry thing for you?
Well, of course now, I was the commander of the training division for a period of time, but actually that's not where I find, what would you call it, the greatest compliment is when somebody says that you're their mentor, because these are the times when people pay attention to you, not just in what you're teaching, but when you're doing your job and doing your work. And if they can find leadership in that, then that's one of the highest compliments that I can be paid. I'd like to think that perhaps I was a mentor for several people.
That is what I've been given to understand. And the thing that struck me most about this conversation was when this particular officer, who is now a deputy chief
yes.
in Dallas, said that he walks his talk and he talks his walk. And that's probably, along, as you're saying, one of the highest compliments anybody can get or give to someone. She also said to me that the funniest thing you ever said to her was, the skating rink is closed. Can you relate that story?
Yes, I can. This had to do with a young recruit officer who was really struggling with his probationary period and his training period. And I always felt a particular responsibility for making sure that when we train young people that we give them every opportunity to perform and provide them all the support that's necessary for that. And so as he struggled with this, I did a great deal of research to try to find out if, in fact, we were just trying to make a young person do something that he just really wasn't capable of doing, you know, which is not fair to a person. And so I went back through all of his high school and college years and found out a great deal about the young man. And as I found out in my research, the young man was brilliant, just lazy.
Well, that happens sometimes, yes.
And so I had called him and his supervisor and this particular, who is now deputy chief, this person also into the office. And we were talking, I was talking to the young man, and I explained to him that I was concerned about his probationary period, and that, in fact, I did some research to make sure that I wasn't requiring something of him that he was not capable of performing. And that what I found out that he was extremely intelligent, and he had skated through high school, he had skated through college, and he was skating through his probationary period. And I said, young man, the rink is closed.
I can see why that would make everybody else in the room laugh. It probably didn't make that kid laugh at the point in time. Did you by any chance keep up with him? Do you know anything that's happened to him?
Well, unfortunately, he's skating at somebody else's rink.
Well, yeah, so your rink is certainly closed. Yeah, I can appreciate that. That's the kind of thing sometimes that people need to know up front. And you probably did him a huge favor by telling him. You've made some differences like that in your career as well. Most notably, I can think of knocking down some doors. There weren't very many women on the air when you tackled that particular profession, not in Dallas.
No, not in sportscasting there wasn't. At that time, you'd had, nationally, you had Jane Chastain and then Phyllis George, and that was it, that had gone in. And so out of the rest of the country, we were very rare and far and in between. And so I still remember my first press conference. See, I actually grew up very athletic, and I really knew sports. I was unusual for a girl because I really knew what I was talking about. And so the first press conference they sent me to, my first interview was with Billie Jean King. And when I walked in, there'd never been a woman walk in Dallas before, and all the reporters kind of looked like, what is she doing? She's got radio equipment, and she's here. And I got all set up for the interview, and when she came in, I jumped in right off the bat and started asking my questions. And they were like shocked because at that time tennis was a new rising sport of interest, and a lot of the men really didn't know tennis. And I had played some semi-pro tennis, so I knew the little nuances of the game, and so I knew the questions to ask, and I gained their respect right up front, and so that was good. They knew I knew what I was doing.
That's critical, especially when you're the first girl in the door, because there's going to be the temptation to think of her as either that cute little thing that we sort of throw a bone to every now and then, or that one that I won't use the particular term, but I think you know what I'm referring to. She's making us crazy because she's such a witch. How's that? Yeah, she's a witch. Does that work?
That works.
And I know that you were very careful to walk the line, that you, yes, I'm feminine, yes, I'm a female, and yes, I know what I'm doing. Those things are not diametrically opposed.
I did. I never felt like I wanted to go into the locker room. I know later on there were women that wanted to make a statement by going in the locker room, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. Would I want to go into a room with a bunch of naked men standing around there sweated and all this stuff? And so I would just go to their PR guy just prior to the game being over and say, tell him who I needed to interview. And they would pull them out for me before they went into the locker room. So I actually got my interviews up front. And they were very accommodating and everything. So it worked for me. I just, like I said, I never was a locker room lady.
And that still works. Now, at some point you made the transition from radio to television. And was it newscasting or was it still sports?
I did some news, but it's primarily sports where I really made my big transition over. I had a sports show at Channel 5, a weekly show. I did some things with CBS and interviews and things like that. So I transitioned over and really enjoyed it, really liked it.
Everybody who's in this business of television or broadcasting has a blooper. Do you have a blooper that you'll share?
Depends which one you want.
The one you feel most comfortable with.
Well, you know, we were talking, you've got those things that are just career breakers, and maybe since we're talking about the sports part of it, I had just flown in from the West Coast doing a soccer game, and when I got in and reported to the station, Byron Nelson happened to be going on here in Dallas, and it was at Preston Trail, so they put me in a car and took me out there, so we need you to help us work the game. So I got there and they put me in a golf cart and took me out and dropped me, and it was actually Jack Nicklaus and a couple of other guys in his foursome that were playing, and you get to know these guys when you've covered them, and they know you. Well, first of all, I saw them all talking on the fairway, and I had this rig on my back. I looked like I was going to blast off into outer space, but it was radio equipment. And finally, after they'd made their shots to the green, Jack walked all the way across over there, and he says, "Rose, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm on the air." So I'm on the air, you know. But we get on up to the green now, and I'm a little kind of rattled by this, you know, and I'm starting to describe the play action up there. And unbeknownst to me, I haven't made the transition from dealing in soccer with yards to golf that we talk about feet. And they're doing putts, and I'm saying they've got, you know, 35-yard putts and things. And of course, the men in the crowd, you know, their eyes are rolling back, and they're going, "Oh, it's just like a woman, you know, what's she doing out here doing golf, you know?" So that was one of them.
You were trying to shorten the game, maybe.
I was trying to shorten it a little bit.
That's wonderful. That's a great story. At some point in both your mutual careers, you guys meet.
Yeah.
I'd love to know a little bit about that story. Lowell?
Well, actually, we met at a friend's house. There was a party, and I saw her across the room. Actually, she had come in much earlier. I was in the kitchen and having a drink, and as she had come in and was getting ready to leave, I saw her stand up and go across, and there must have been 50 to 75 people in the room. And I saw her, and I was so taken with her that I set my drink down, walked all the way across the room and caught her before she got out the door to introduce myself to her.
Across the crowded room.
Yeah, across a crowded room, right?
And this is another thing that we're going to surprise everybody with, that you're a romantic.
Unfortunately, I don't think I impressed her very much because she didn't remember me the next time that we met. No, that's not true. She did remember me.
I vaguely remembered it. I was just tired. I'd had a hard day at work and my feet hurt, and I just stopped by there to be a nice person, so I really wasn't, you know, in the mood to spot somebody across a crowded room.
But at least it was romantic for one of us.
But at least, yeah.
And it makes a great romantic story after the fact, you see, because you got the girl.
Yes,
So something worked.
It took me a while, but I got her.
Yeah, he does have persistence, because I was really, I was at a place in my life where my kids were in college, one in medical school, and they were raised, and I really didn't have any plans to remarry. I was just fine and doing well. And so even the first time he called for us to meet and everything, you know, I had this attitude, you know, like, well, I guess, like, I don't have anything else better to do, and I've got to run an errand, and yeah, I can come and meet you, you know. And I was like 30 minutes late. I mean, I was just awful, and he was so nice. He was there waiting. He was so patient.
So how'd this date end up? I feel like I'm on a Love Connection or something. How did this date end up? This woman's 30 minutes late, and she's got this bad attitude. What happened?
Well, actually, we were just going to have a drink, and then, as it turned out, we decided to stay for supper, for dinner rather. And so, as we left, I walked her to her car, and I gave her a kiss on the cheek. And from there, it just got better and better.
That's wonderful. Something changed your mind. Because if I remember, and I don't know if I've got this story exactly right, you hadn't ever ridden on a motorcycle before.
Well, I had in just a little bit earlier years. I just hadn't, in the later years, been on the motorcycle like that. And he'd called me to go riding with him, and unbeknownst to me, one of my sons had come in that day, was coming in that day from college, and he happened to be there. And I said, well, you know, I'll be back later, when Lowell roared up to pick me up. And so he comes up, and I put on my helmet and wave bye to my son. And as I roar off with him on the back of his Harley, my son's on the phone calling everybody, going, Mother just left on a Harley. And he calls his other brother, Mother just left on a Harley. You know, I mean, the whole family's like terrified. They think I've now gone down the tube. Because they don't know him. They don't know anything about him. And they think I'm running with a rough crowd. You know, so.
That's great. Because, well, and I have to share this, your friend Jill described you as a Boy Scout, and she didn't think you could even get mad at anybody, which is how that whole skating ring story came about. So you changed her mind, obviously. What do you think did it?
What thing changed her mind?
Yeah.
Goodness, I never thought about what might have done it. I'd like to think that perhaps she figured, I think, you know, what it really was is you have to go back just a little bit and look at her driving record. and I think it was probably, it's going to be a lot cheaper to join them. And so she,
that's pretty good.
This is
okay.
true. I was known to have a lead foot. This is true.
You were trying to make it from that first story to the next one. I understand.
But anyway, I think that perhaps my persistence paid off more than anything else.
To look at the two of you, because it's been 10 years since you married, it's easy probably for your friends to see that you are, even though you might be different temperamentally, so much alike in terms of the things that you value and the things that you care about. Number one, your families, because you guys have joined. You have grandchildren in common now, which is a really neat thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do. We've got 12 with the 13th that's going to be delivered in the next couple of weeks, actually.
Wow.
So, and they're all wonderful. They're all really wonderful.
That's probably what drew us together more than anything else, is we did share values. The family values, values of integrity and loyalty, and the things that that drew us together. It's certainly, while we are diverse in a number of things, it wasn't our diversity that bonded us together. It was the ways that we're alike. We are different in some ways.
We talk sometimes, you know, that we were, well, the other night we were talking, and we really talk to each other. I mean, we really have discussions about things, about politics, about local things, about family things. I mean, we really talk, and so, but we talk like you talk to a good friend. You know, we're very comfortable in communicating with each other, and that's really nice.
Your friend Marty Rendelman said that you married your best friend.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a wonderful way to feel.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You guys both then, after you married, came to the Irving community. How did you end up in Irving, Lowell?
Well, actually, I had a couple of police officers that called me, a couple of Irving police officers that called me and came over to have lunch with me one time and told me that the position would be opening up and they would like for me to come over and apply for the job. I was flattered that they would come do that.
That says a mouthful.
And so I applied for the job and was very fortunate and got the job. And gosh, I feel like I've died and gone to heaven. I love it here.
I'm thrilled to hear you say that. I'm sure a lot of other people would be thrilled to hear you say it too, because you really had a wonderful career in Dallas. You were ready to retire. You could have gone off and ridden off with this beautiful woman into the sunset on your Harley, but you're here and you're working as chief of police now.
Yes.
And when you guys moved to the community, you got involved immediately. Tell me a little bit about the formation of the Police Foundation.
When we came over, we saw some things that had not ever been done before, like the awards banquet, or that there was not a foundation. And of course, coming from Dallas, we saw the role that this helped support officers and make their lives a little bit better. And but actually, when he first came over here, the mayor had called me. One of his officers' little girls needed a transplant, and they wanted me to do something to help do a fundraiser. So I got into that, but I began raising a lot of money, and people were saying to me, okay, well, if all this money is not used, what's going to happen to it? And I said, well, whatever's left over will roll into a foundation, and because we're going to start one anyway. And so that all went hand in hand, but we put it in place, and I'm getting ready to do another push with that to get it fully endowed, but it'll be in place forever for these officers, and that'll kind of be a legacy, I guess, that we leave behind, is this police foundation. And of course, the awards banquet has been just great. All the officers and their families always get good feedback. They really appreciate that, and it lets them know how much the community appreciates them. So,
obviously, with the Police Foundation and the awards banquet, you've made quite a contribution to the community. For both of you, I'd like you to think about this. What difference do you hope you'll have made throughout your lives in this community? Of course, I'd love to know, but what difference do you hope that you'll have made?
One of my New Testament teachers told me, and I had not ever thought about it this way, that God gives people the gift of being an encourager. That means you encourage other people. And I know I've done a lot of things in my life that people look at and everything, but one of the other things that a lot of times you don't see is that both with my family, my children, and friends, and people that are around me, and I had never thought about that, but I do have the gift of encouragement, and so that's what I had never thought about it that way, but that's what my legacy will be, is that I reach out and I help other people to get where they want to be. So.
Well, every time you accomplish something in your career, you feel like, well, gee, this is the point that I've really made a difference. But based on your experience and your growth and your opportunity to contribute more, I'd like to think that each time that something significant happens, that, gee, that's it. You know, that's the one that's really the best. And as a result, I'd like to think that what we've done right here in Irving is for both of us, is the largest contribution we've made. Of course, you always like to think that your major contribution is having helped someone to change their life for the better. And there's a number of instances through my career that, in spite of all the really tough times that come along and the failures, and unfortunately in this business, you know, we send a lot of failures to the penitentiary. But there's a lot of people whose lives have been impacted by either by me or by the people that I work with, that we've changed some people's lives and ministered to them, as you would have it. And I'd like to think that Irving will be the best, that this is where the most significant changes will take place.